there has been a growing concern about what masculinity is and the crisis of the boy child. Why are we seeing more men shun the issues of marriage, for instance, right? I mean, we have a growing concern among groups of men who slowly detest the idea of relationships and long-term commitment.
Yeah.
Among my sister men I know in my circles, a lot of them are divorcing, or either divorced, or they live very, very, want to ruka around.
Yeah.
A lot of us millennials actually lost our parents and uncles through HIV and AIDS. And so a good number of us have grown up without fathers or a lot of positive male influence. I think no one teaches us as men, or no one gives us the privileges and the free pass to be able to match up to societal expectations. It's always point the fingers on men. We cannot really just say, you know what, to hell with this religion, to hell with these things, to hell with my family. You realize very fast that without a support system, suicide becomes a very near option for you. If you lack identity, then you don't seek out support systems, because identity really informs where you seek out help. It informs what your social circle looks like. It informs even your value system in terms of what you call morality.
Welcome to Manspeqtive Africa, your favorite show. My name is Dannish Odongo, aka the son of Kano, and it's my absolute pleasure to give you weekly interesting conversation around men, masculinity, identity, and how we relate with women. And of course, the hashtag is Manspeqtive Africa. Let us know what you think. If you're watching us on KTN, we are on YouTube. In fact, we drop an episode every Thursday. And if you are watching us on YouTube, every Wednesday night we are on KTN. And KTN rebranded. They've brought all the drama and the amazing content. Tune in and watch us there. And of course, today, being the Mental Health Awareness Month of May, we are bringing in together experts in this area of psychology. And today, I have the pleasure of hosting none other than Mr. Chomba Njoka himself. Mr. Chomba, how are you doing, my brother?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
People have been sending me your online stuff. Of course, I've known you. I mean, you were to come on the show last year, but of course, we're not able to make it. But then today, we have the pleasure to have you on set.
Yes.
You describe yourself as many things, but you're the best person to tell us who you are.
Thank you. I am a psychologist.
Yeah.
I practice clinically as a therapist.
Okay.
I am also a suicidologist. That's my specialty. So
Okay.
I deal with suicide prevention as well
Okay.
from a research perspective.
Okay.
And also, apart from that, one of my hobbies is writing about men
Okay.
and masculinity. So I might have an opinion or two about masculinity and men.
All right.
Yes.
So I like that you might have an opinion, because in my profession, which is journalism, is that we say that we are all entitled to our opinions, but we are entitled to informed opinions. So
Right.
I hope that we will definitely share those opinions here. Do you think there's a crisis of masculinity in Kenya?
I don't think if it's even a crisis of masculinity just in Kenya. I think it's just globally, really. If you've noticed the patterns that have been there around men, the issues from the US, the rise in certain ideologies, and the call for men and mental health, the issues of suicide and mental health, suicide and men, to just generally, even issues around identity and boys, from the UK to the US, there has been a growing concern about what masculinity is and the crisis of the boy child, and how we have been neglected, really. So there are growing conversations around masculinity and mental health. So I think what counts is what that crisis is, because depends where you're describing it from.
Yeah.
So different lenses, of course, would see it differently. So but I think there is a concern around masculinity.
All right. I agree with you, and of course, May is the Mental Health Awareness Month.
Right.
Do you think we talk enough about men's mental health? Or do you think we link the social challenges we are seeing, especially gender-based violence, femicide, the red pill movement, or the conversation in the manosphere? Do you think we have the capacity or even the intellectual rigor to really link them to the state of mental health, especially in Kenya and in the global south?
Absolutely. I think Kenya is one of the spaces that we've had one of the most robust conversations around mental health, men and mental health, and just masculinity in general. If you look at the Red Pill movement, started around, I think it became more popular around 2017.
Yeah.
Before that, we had concerns around, of course, there was a backlash around feminism and masculinity. Yeah. So I think we have evolved over time. If you look at the promulgation of the new constitution, that was in 2010. 2010. Yeah. We had affirmative action. So that, of course, introduced a couple of other things. Of course, there was affirmative action included having more women in the universities, and there was that just drive to have more women in workspaces. And I think we have come a long way as a society around that area. Yeah. So fast forward, we have, even in parliament, we have 2,000 in the rule and all these positions. And of course, in school, the school setup, there was, that empowerment drive around women empowerment, to have more women enrolled in universities, in high schools, etc. I mean, there's this couple, we've evolved over time towards, of course, the workplace. Then now we have the feminism movement around late 2019, then towards 2020. I mean, from the media to the programs. I mean, I don't know whether you remember, but a long while we never had conversations around, a lot of women empowerment programs on TV. It became popular after, that empowerment drive. Yeah. So we had those Women in Power. I'm sure you've seen such programs on TV. Women in Business, the CEO of a woman, etc. Such, around those areas. And of course, now we started having issues around men. So it was a response. So the Red Pill came in. And of course, the feminism also, went a bit extreme. And then there was a response from the male side. Yeah. And it became popular around 2017. So by the time we Rolando Tomasi and the likes, Richard Cooper, and some of those guys from those ages, but I think we are the first in Africa to really, be very strong around the Red Pill. I, for instance, was in touch with Rolando Tomasi at some point. He used to tweet my tweets a while back. Okay. But that was way back before it became popular. So I think we've had that evolution.
Oh, you already knew him before he became the popular guy?
Absolutely. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think I was probably among the first Red Pillers in this country. Because I think one of the groups we set up among Red Pill was among the first groups. Yeah. That was way, way, way back. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I go a while back.
I like that.
Yes.
What do you think people would know about men, masculinity, and identity? What are some of those things you think we need to know? Maybe we don't know, or even if we know, we need to scream more about.
Well, I think I would want first to ask ourselves, where are we as men in Kenya?
Okay.
If you think about the state of the Kenyan male, perhaps I'll start with the different ages, Generation X's, and let's start with millennials because that's where I am. Yeah. If you look at Kenyan millennials, what are the stats say about us? From the economics, the level of joblessness, our dating scene, our connection with our parents. Yeah. I think millennials really cut off their parents, quote unquote. Yeah. We are seeing, I think where we are, in my opinion, is we have been a crisis, sort of, the millennials. If you're in your early 30s and maybe early 40s and late 30s, thereabout, depending on, but I would say we have a lot of issues around dating. Among at least the men I know in my circles, a lot of them are divorcing. Yeah. Or either divorced or divorcing, or they live very, very, what's that word? You want to kurukaruka around.
Yeah, yeah.
Sevens, Kenya sevens, huko kiendanga, Naivasha, and Safari Rally. Yeah. Who counts, who goes there a lot. Yeah? Yeah. So I think even in regards issues around mental health, we are seeing a lot of us who are very depressed. The numbers around suicide are, I may not confirm this officially because we don't have a surveillance system around, very good surveillance system on suicide. But I would imagine from the numbers I have come across, we top among people who are taking their lives, right? So, and we are also among the brokest people around, you know. So there are all these different inequalities around men.
Yeah.
And I think it is fair to say men are suffering, you know.
Yeah.
There is a cry of help from how we act, you know, and how we respond to issues, how we respond to stress. I mean, we've seen issues of men killing women, femicide, you know. So how we react to stress, how we are responding to it, shows that indeed there's something really, you know, wanting, and perhaps may need to be worked on.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So this cry for help, first of all, where is it coming from? Where is this? Nini hiyo inatufinya, because it says the wearer of the shoes, who knows where it pinches the most?
Well, you'd have to look at it. It's really broader than we imagine.
Okay.
And that's why I like to see it, that not to simplify issues, right?
Yeah.
Because on one end, if you see men are taking their lives more than women, I think
it's 70% of 70%. That's confirmed. Yes.
So that's about, for every 5 suicide, 3 are men.
Yeah.
And you think about it. In fact, I think the number is high actually.
Yeah.
So of course, when you think about it, it goes way back, right?
Yeah.
Why are we seeing more men shun the issues of marriage, for instance, right? I mean, we have a growing concern among groups of men who slowly detest the idea of relationships and long-term commitment.
Yeah.
A while back, I'm sure you've seen trends around shaming of men and baby daddies, and you know, I mean, if you look at the patterns on how men have been treated and addressed, especially the millennials, you see, especially online, you see a certain pattern, you know, that men are the problem, and you know,
our world would be better without them. Maybe
that's the extreme version.
The extreme version of it, yeah.
So I think where it comes from, I would say it's from identity, because what we have is the burden and the expectations that we have of men, and the capacity to match up to those expectations. I think no one teaches us as men, or no one gives us the privileges and the free pass to be able to match up to societal expectations. It's always point the fingers on men. But the deficit really you see in fatherlessness, you know, a lot of economic difficulties, because one of the predictive factors of suicide among men is when you come from when you lose your job, or you have socioeconomically challenged.
Yeah.
Because men and their identities is tied to money.
Yeah.
And the ability to provide, the ability to facilitate. The indicators of competence are really tied to money. If you lose that, and that status, then you have a problem. So you can look at it even from the cultural perspective. When you have not had a father, I mean, and you know, you remember the scourge of the HIV pandemic, early 2000s,
late 90s actually, early 2000s,
early 2000s. A lot of us millennials actually lost our parents and uncles through HIV and AIDS. So that is something we never talk about, right? And so a good number of us have grown up without fathers or a lot of positive male influence. So the turn of the century, this century has had its own unique challenges on the Kenyan man, and of course even in the workplace and all these dynamics. So we sort of are pushed towards the corner slowly, but somehow we do not have a way to work around it.
There's something you said which I think is deeply profound, that apart from the fact that some of the millennials were raised in that, I mean, we were just becoming adults during the HIV and AIDS scourge. But remember, our fathers were the people who saw pre-colonial Kenya and post-colonial Kenya. Our fathers are the ones who saw that dichotomy of a world that they were inferior and the white man was superior, and then eventually they had internal rule, and everything that was promised to them did not come to pass. They're the ones who saw a country that was united to fight the white man, and then eventually this country then becomes fragmented and begin to fight each other. They're the ones who saw the impact of ethnicity. Like, for example, my father was on the road when the 1969 massacre of Kisumu happened.
Oh my!
And he saw a gun being pointed at a certain person in our local market and being shot. Till today, my father is 76 years old and he remembers. I can imagine where you come from, Mount Kenya region, the people who took the oath, the 1969 oath, and guys who were really forced, and there was the terror of, of solidifying this rule. And men were the primary people who, were used. I can just imagine, you coming from a region where, men are put in detention camps and all these things. And I think we are the millennials are the ones who are coming of age and beginning to question that, okay, maybe I was raised in a broken home. Maybe my father was abusive to my mother. I did not have a word to define it then. But now we don't have the tools and the equipment to actually deal with it. And now here we are, lonely, depressed, dying by suicide, buying vehicles to impress, buying things to impress those who we cannot even impress. And of course, then now you have, in our era is when also the gender equality begins to really peak. So, Chomba, right now, if you're a millennial, it's very difficult to marry a woman who is of your caliber. Either you marry down because marrying up is it's challenging, So you have to go down after continue, I don't know. Is my analysis of that problem remotely accurate?
Absolutely. I think there are really a lot of factors that, if we are really to go deeper, that inform the psyche of the Kenyan male who's a millennial. Because our psyche is really informed by our history, like you mentioned. Our parents, the way we grew up on corporal punishment. We grew up around rules. Don't break rules. Follow these rules, and you will be rewarded. The way our parents raised us, you do not have rights, so you do not express emotions. The way they showed love was purely economic. So I am providing for my household. No one else should question me. But of course, over time, civilization evolves. We are the age that slowly now is becoming aware of emotions and the need to actually analyze them, express them. That we are realizing being stoic endlessly and repressing emotions may not actually be productive for us, and it is doing us bad because then we have parenting issues. Someone mentioned recently how our parents as millennials treat our children. It's very different from how they treated us. And we wish they treated us that way. So you can see that disconnect.
But is it because they're grandmothers and grandfathers, so they've mellowed out? So maybe when they're raising us, they're raising us as tyrants.
I think it's an issue of remorse. It's an issue of remorse. You are remorseful of you're trying to overcompensate
for what you did. But you don't have the words to apologize to the person you harmed. But you can
don't apologize. So I think what informs the psyche of our psyche, because the psyche dictates how you perceive things, the lens that you have towards society, how you view yourself, the I, and how you interpret things and how you actualize your action plan, and most importantly, your life philosophy. Because I think one of the challenges I've experienced is when you ask a millennial, do you have a life philosophy? Do you have a sense of values? Because we seem so turned up, right? Because we are the ones who said no to religion. This year, kanisa. We are just we are Christians. I take my kids to catechism.
No, we're spiritual. We say we're spiritual.
We're not religious.
We're not religious, spiritual,
And we are the same people who, have fancy names for our kids as well. Jaden and all these things. So, but we are not connected to our roots. So there's all this muddle that we are in. That sort of our identity is not really clear cut because we stand in between the old school and the new school. We have a level of awareness, sort of, but we have a lot of wounds to heal, sort of. But so I think sort of breaking out from a shell, and it's not easy. It has not been easy, and you have all these things that tell you, this is what a man should look like. This is what power as a woman looks like. But then we are left to our own schemes and to our own challenges. You follow a certain ideology, even as women as well. Now, no one tells you, no. Because we are left to our own schemes. So I think really if you go deeper, you realize, even like you mentioned, even the Western ideologies, right? Equally have a place in our psyche, and either they're messing us or making us better.
Yeah.
And so, if we were to analyze, because I was just thinking about this recently, even for instance, perhaps you're going to talk about it, but let me just preempt.
Yeah.
The Red Pill movement.
Yeah.
And just the call for men and their wellness and all these things. Where is it coming from? Right? Because you have to go deeper. Even colonialism has had its own part to play. Like you mentioned, our men from, I think people have mocked my village men for being named, calling their kids, their surnames are usually their mom names, but
their mother's names. Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's just, our system is matriarchal, and a lot of course, the Western concept is really patriarchal, it's the hegemony comes from the man down, but our system it was weird because it was matriarchal, but also men had a place of leadership. So, if you think of Giko and Mombi, those were women, so there's those dynamics, yeah. So I think we do not really imagine. I think we don't really think about it, but I think even where we come from, yeah, how we marry, what we perceive as who is a mother, who is a mom, right? Who is a father.
So let me ground this conversation.
Right, please.
So the challenge you are saying, and I like the fact that you have narrowed our conversation to millennial men. I like that because the problem I have, and I was telling the previous guest that we always treat men as a homogeneous unit.
Yes.
Homogeneous, unit, But men are different. Men come in different shapes, sizes, and different flavors. We are very different, So let's talk about millennial men. So you're saying that the problem we have is that we are caught up in an identity crisis.
Yes.
The reality that what we are raised in and what we are promised versus what we got, the wounds we carry versus our inability to heal it, and the fact that we are raised in a world that did not have internet, and then the internet found us, and now we have smartphones.
Yes.
Then we also some of us tested the village life, but also we're in an urban area where we were connected, but now we are divided.
Yes.
We are also, raised. So it's like, are you saying that a big chunk of the problem why millennial men are struggling is because of that lack of identity?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because if you lack identity, then you don't seek out support systems.
Yeah.
Because identity really informs where you seek out help. It informs what your social circle looks like. It informs even your value system in terms of what you call morality.
Yeah.
What is allowed, what is not allowed. It informs even issues around property acquisition.
Yeah.
You notice our parents are obsessed with property acquisition, land. You have all these politicians who are fathers' ages, who are every day they're just land. They can't just get over it.
Yeah.
But I think we're in a different space. Yeah. We may be a little bit like them, but we're not really obsessed about land. I think even the issues around, if I ask you, do you have any property given to your name in your country?
I do.
I think that's a question you don't ask a lot of Kenyan millennials, men. Yeah. Because even how we perceive land and property. If I ask you today, umejuta jenga wapi?
My dad has pointed it already.
Yes. Yeah. Are you going to build at home?
Yeah.
Or are you considering buying a property elsewhere?
I'll build at home, but also elsewhere.
Yes. Yeah. Do you have the capacity to do that?
Yes,
economically?
I do. That's why you're hosting this podcast, so that when our audience watches it and we get enough views and sponsors, we can actually actualize these dreams. Yeah.
So with all these dynamics, and that's pressure.
That's pressure. Yes. Pressure, I like that. Yes. Yeah.
Those are expectations. And you have no idea how to maneuver through them. Because on one hand, I want to please my parents, I want to please the old school, but I also want to chart my own path. And sometimes the old school doesn't like it. It's saying, oh no, this is our culture. This is how you do things.
Yeah.
Also, you're chatting away as a man. What kind of parent do I want to be? Do I want to be the authoritarian? Do I want to be? Where do I want my kids to live? Do I want them to speak in their mother tongue?
Yeah.
Do your kids speak in mother tongue?
Perhaps?
Would be perhaps worth asking. Yeah. So there are all these identity. Is indeed there's an identity crisis because identity informs that psyche.
Yeah.
what is we are raised? Some of us, maybe our grandfathers had more than one wives, right?
Yeah.
What we have now is we of course grew up in Jimmy Gadu saying wachana na mpango wa kando. You know, remember that?
Yeah, I remember that ad. Yeah, pick a sabu.
You know?
Yeah.
So sisi we know mpango wa kando. Then these days we have side chicks. That's wanaitwa aje.
Yeah.
But even our idea of what a family looks like, what ideas about infidelity looks like, right? So that's what I was saying. Even the red pill now brings more conflict.
Yeah.
Because then it might go against your what you have been raised around, your ideas around that. Equally, there's your church. I mean, you've also been raised in church.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know a millennial who was a very good church goer.
Yeah.
But sato utapatikana wapi, you know.
Yeah.
So there's all this. There's a dichotomy, you know, of the lives sort of live, and that significantly reflects what we are on the inside. I mean, our parents had more solid identities. I mean, you knew this is how. There are no questions about it.
Yeah. And you followed it.
They followed it. You know?
Yeah.
But us, sort of in between.
But also, we are the generation that learned a bit more, because, for example, you find that most millennials are the first-time degree holders in their homes.
Yes.
Because we often think about the elites who got degrees, but actually, majority of millennials are the ones who first of all got either a diploma or a degree in their homes.
Yes.
They made more money than the previous generation,
Yes.
and then many of us became we got into the workforce during the Kibaki era.
Yes.
You remember?
Absolutely.
And there's a boom.
Yes.
And then these two brothers came and then ruined everything.
Yes.
And then in your late 20s and early 30s, you were surviving because then the economy had tanked.
Yes.
And that messed up the economy.
Yes.
And now, 20 years, bad news to you.
Yes.
If it continues like this, because right now, since Uhuru Kenyatta took over power and now Ruto is president, we're talking about 12.5 years.
Yes.
Can you imagine a millennial when they got in power and you're in your late 20s?
Yes.
And then the economy was changed from a merit-based to connections and to deals.
Yes.
And now you are in your late 30s or mid-30s and you have nothing.
Yes.
You have absolutely nothing.
You have nothing to show.
You have nothing to show.
Can you imagine? It's more pressure.
Yeah, more pressure.
And you can imagine, you've lived in that system hoping for, of course we say meritocracy is a myth.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, Darius, says that that the system of merit is flawed in this country, at least.
In this country, it's
and even
flawed.
Generally, because now you're told, our parents worked hard. We are being told work smart, not hard. So cheat your way around. There are all these cheat codes and all these things. Work online. So
the books we read are 10 ways to, one way to fix one pill to fix your sleep, one thing to do this.
Absolutely. So it's always, we are constantly bombarded with the need to constantly evolve. And change our narratives. Because today you are this, then tomorrow you have to evolve very fast because you have to adapt. I think there's no one who is forced to adapt as quickly as the millennial. And a lot of us don't have the skills even to adapt. Because sometimes adaptability means you also equally have to have money to adapt. I mean, because you don't even have that money in the first place.
Mr. Chomba Njoka, you're saying that it is very difficult for a millennial to adapt, because every time you adapt, your adaptation is not enough. You move from a 2-bedroom house, say in Kariobangi South or in Buruburu. That's what I've seen a lot of millennials do. You go to a 3-bedroom house in Dendigwa, in Kikuyu, all those areas, and then you realize that, by the way, it's nice, but it's also not very cool enough, because Ruaka is urban nowadays, is a bit urban, but also is rural, because you can hear cows more, and when it floods, you cannot get your vehicle in. How do we navigate this challenge? Why is it important that we are grounded, and why is it important that we need to talk about this conversation?
Because the world is indeed evolving very fast for us millennials. And sometimes the temptation is to play catch up all the time. Is to constantly feel, and of course there's a lot of inadequacy that comes. You've turned 30 or 35. Then the demands come. Do I have a car? Have I saved for retirement? And then all this, the list keeps coming. And of course, there are all these now new constructs of what success is. Now you have to challenge your old ways, how you looked at success. And then the issues of mental health, because you see, you don't have all the resources in the world. So why is it important? Because the world is evolving. And if you don't ground yourself, then you'll be in constant crisis.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of millennials really degenerate. I think I've spoken about this in my social media.
Yeah.
How millennials degenerate. They are one crisis away sometimes from complete bankruptcy. Sometimes they are one, crisis away.
Yeah.
If you lose just one thing,
Yeah.
you lose your family.
Yeah.
Crisis. Complete crisis. And a
Yeah.
lot of them really degenerate. Yeah. I think and I've seen, of course, millennials, sometimes some of them have the option of going back up country.
Yeah.
I tried that, but it's not very nice.
Yeah. Oh, you went back to our country?
Yeah, I went at some point. I had my own streak around Nairobi and corporate life.
Yeah.
Then I said, things went south, corona nini. I decided to go up country. Uko bana maisha. Ina kuramba. Because now, that's when you realize the crisis of the millennium.
Yeah.
Because you're the guy with a degree, the master's.
Yeah.
And we all know we came to your graduation.
Yeah.
We came to your graduation. And here you are.
Yeah.
So in the first few weeks, they wonder, maybe you just came around to, to check things out. But they don't know you're broke. You just come to, find your footing. And you're wondering, who do you hang out with? Because when you umesoma, so you can't even go to the local dance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so your esteem, you want to protect your esteem.
Yeah.
Your friends no longer call you.
Yeah.
And so the millennial takes a deep plunge.
Yeah.
Because upcountry is not for you.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a romanticization in our heads.
Yeah. Yeah.
We assume, I think that's a problem with women I've seen. Illusion of the fantasy of upcountry sometimes.
Yeah.
Or you imagine, I want to eat mboga za kienyeji.
Yeah.
I want to, see cows.
Yeah.
But you remember, you're not from us. In fact, your parents worked out to get you out of that system.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Ulikuwa wewe upelekwa academy.
Yeah.
All these things.
Yeah.
They worked out so that you don't need to walk to school and all these challenges.
Yeah.
In fact, walking to school was seen as,
Yeah.
That's why, as millennials, we work very hard so that our parents wapelekwa na basi shule at least a country. So you want to set very big standards. Yeah? And so we romanticize that nice life. But you're not equipped enough to sustain that life. So, I deviated kidogo. But why is it important to be grounded? Because you'll have conflicting interests every day. And you don't have that capacity.
Yeah.
So sometimes I imagine that all I need to do is work harder, do some deals. Yeah. You work with the county government, wait up on my deals. Just find a way of go abroad.
Yeah.
I think you'll be interested to find out the number of millennials going abroad. Right now, if you decide to go abroad and do your master's, utaezana saa hii 38. It is difficult. Utaoa, ama you go back, you have a family, you have a kid. It's a challenge, But I think I empathize with especially men, perhaps, and even women, really. I think we cannot really stop and say that none of us, some are suffering better than the others.
Yeah.
We all struggling.
Yeah. And
I think it all goes back to what is your life philosophy? You have to find yourself and say, what is my value system? Look at your history, right? And don't forget you come from somewhere. I've talked about this previously in some other podcasts, that we become our fathers, become our grandparents, the people we thought we would never become.
Exactly. Find ourselves exactly. Yeah.
So we cannot dissociate ourselves from our history entirely.
Yeah.
We have to combine all those aspects. Yeah? And this is what I mean. I think we cannot really just say, you know what, to hell with this religion, to hell with these things, to hell with my family. You realize very fast that without a support system, suicide becomes a very new option for you.
And I think in millennials, we have romanticized cutting people off. We have romanticized it. A bit of inconvenience, and in a friendship, I'm choosing me.
I'm choosing
my friends narcissist. We are labeling everything as a mental health problem. Somebody reinforces their boundary, or they are selfish, or somebody is that's a narcissist, or the man I was dating was a narcissist. Because women like to label men as narcissists so much.
Yes, abusive, and not that it doesn't happen. But really,
but Chomba, what it means to have a narcissistic personality disorder. It's not a pedestrian label we give people. Is it? As a psychologist, you know what it means.
Absolutely.
Or all these things people call themselves OCD.
Yes.
You do know what it means to people who have OCD have severe challenges in life.
Yes.
So this idea in millennial lingo, I can call it the millennial lingua franca of always labeling everything a mental illness. You know, me my ADHD, or you know, my depression, or you know, my anxiety.
Yes.
Why is it yours? You're just having, you know, challenges, but it's not level of to be given a name. Anyway, I just wanted to correct that. Yeah.
I think it speaks and it's reflective of our suffering.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to diagnose ourselves. Because
Yeah.
you're wondering,
I like that.
what is this? You know, so everything seems like a dysfunction. You know, everything seems to present a bit of, you know, your scenario and situation.
Yeah.
Because we have really a lot of crises. You're even trying to understand what is this marriage thing, you know. Is this abuse? Is this thing?
Yeah.
You know, and you have all this conflicting information from the internet and from modernism. And so everything becomes a crisis. You know?
Yeah.
Until I think we silence all these voices.
Yeah.
And now ask ourselves, who am I? Where do I stand?
Yeah.
How do I feel? Address the issues of emotions.
Yeah.
What am I comfortable with?
Yeah.
Because as long as we are alive, we will still have new things, new trends, and all these things. And I think the safest place sometimes is go back to your identity. Where are you from? Right? If you are from Kenya or wherever, find a little bit about people from around. What is their life philosophy in the villages, right? And you go back to the village, you know, recently you usually have evening walks every day.
Yeah.
And I was walking around the village, and of course, you know, I'm more this guy who's very informed. I'm, you know, doing well on social media and all these things, and have conversations. And everyone wonders, you know, what do I do with this guy? And I'm strolling around the villages, and of course, the village when you're doing walks, people wondering what men are happy.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
They don't understand the concept of walks.
Yeah.
And I noticed something. Children still go to public schools.
Yeah.
People still marry.
Yeah.
When they are broke.
Thank you. Go on.
People have mad houses.
Yeah.
They're perfectly happy.
Yeah.
In fact, kids play. They walk themselves to school.
Yeah. And they speak their mother tongue, and they're happy.
They speak their mother tongue.
Yeah, and and they have accents.
They don't even know what an accent is.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And that is where you find the true African philosophy.
Mm.
That is the core of it.
Mm.
Because you can move around, but you realize that ultimately you have to come back to that place of grounding yourself from where you are. And I think you cannot dissociate yourself from your identity and who you are, your skin color, your genetics. These play a significant role. Your name, you know, all these things then I think is where we should start, or at least where we should go back to. Right?
You've said a very profound thing. You know, I go to the village a lot, and I started going to the village. So I'm a millennial, and I'm a millennial who went through a heartbreak. I'm a millennial who lost everything. I'm a millennial whose properties were possessed in an auction, a legal auction. I'm a millennial who's been on antidepressant. I'm a millennial who's gone through all these things, you know. And before these things happened to me, I did not take time to ask myself the question, because I was in my mid-20s. I was thriving journalist, writing for some of the leading politicians in this country. I was on TV doing political commentary on a show when TV was TV then, you know. And then, of course, you're driving, you're living a nice, you know, SQ in a leafy suburb, a typical millennial, and you're dating, you know, a beautiful millennial girl with an afro and learned, and all of you are pursuing these things, and you meet your friend for meet, and life was good, you know. But I realized that my life was a bubble. Chomba, my life was a bubble, because I worked for a station where people used to have an accent. It's called the capital accents, you know. So you're in this bubble where your colleagues speak the English of the nose, but you see them eating githeri during lunchtime on a staircase, but on social media standards they raise are unrealistic. But you too, they've told you that, when you work here, you are of a certain class. But the amount of money you earn and the reality of where you live don't match. There's a cognitive dissonance. And then the whatever you listen on radio, you realize that it's for the bourgeoisie. It's not for the normal Mwananchi listening to Patanisho. They are listening to Maina King and Kingangi. You here are listening to analysis and quick fire, and you're listening to Situation Room, which is a good platform. But going to the village sort of grounds you. You realize that, by the way, this thing that has gotten into your head in Nairobi, it's a very small thing. Nairobi is a bubble. And Nairobi is a bubble. But in the village, people take porridge and they are happy. In the village, people don't have life figured out in the last 10 years. They don't have life insurance.
They don't have.
But they are okay. They don't live in fancy houses, but they are okay. And I'm not saying that we go back there now, live that type of life. But when you've lived in Nairobi, it's always good to go home.
Yes.
Go to the village.
Yes.
And it's a tragedy that majority of us in the millennial don't have villages.
Yes.
We've
Yes.
gone and built houses here in Syokimau.
Yes.
We've
Yes.
built our villages in Machakos or wherever. And so we have completely cut. And what we call a village is actually a very high-end,
Yes.
a very high-end neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Which you're renting.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, go on. Sorry.
I mean, that's profound. That's profound because there are all these constructs.
Yeah.
Because I think someone mentioned that describing just the difference between Gen Zs and millennials. That millennials, we are concerned about status.
Yeah.
So you do whatever you need to do as long as you don't feel left out.
Yeah.
And we are very sensitive to criticism around our statuses.
Yeah.
Gen Z don't give a damn.
Yeah.
But when you think about millennials, we hire cars, go up country at least so that, I mean, for a millennial, not having a car is a big deal, especially in Christmas.
Yeah.
So I think we all, at some point, really in our life development, we have, and you see, a lot of millennials actually in the midlife area, midlife crisis. Because someone said the life expectancy is 70, so divide by 2, that's 35. So midlife crisis doesn't come at midlife is not 45 as you imagine, it's only 35. So we're in that stage, whether you go to quarter life crisis or midlife crisis, or there in between, it's a crisis. It's a crisis for meaning, it's a crisis for grounding, it's a crisis for so many things. That you sort of leave the world, you have to somehow find in yourself to leave the world, find yourself to ground yourself, find yourself some sense of spirituality, for instance. Because an ego, even in your 20s, you can have an ego. You can say all these proud things and all that. But you see, having no community, or even at least having fake communities,
is worse than having no community.
Absolutely.
Having fake community is worse than having no community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it's us millennials who want to take pictures sana. But they're not Gen Z. Hakuna watu who like status. Look at women. They take photos. Angalia. They want to Diani and all these things.
And a peace sign.
Yes, of course. I mean, and even the fashion trends among Gen Zs will tell you a lot. They're not really, they're not in touch with the Western touch of the gentlemanness. It's more rugged. Even the music as well. Even the singers.
But I tend to slightly. I agree with you, but I just want to add a bit of a point. But what they're wearing, we wore them in the early 2000s. So I think fashion keeps on changing. Even our era, remember when we were coming up, we were the ones, it was the millennials who changed the systems. Remember, the way we were talking about Gen Z, the way people used to talk about us. Remember when we were growing up that, we were called the .com generation. That's what we were called. .com generation, microwave life, we want to expect things very fast. We have tempers. We are sensitive. I see the way we talk about Gen Zs, and I say, oh my goodness, we have become the Gen X who used to talk about millennials.
Absolutely. I mean, you sort of remembered every millennial at least had a Yahoo account.
I remember a certain writer called La Patrona said that if he has a Yahoo account, he most likely is using supplements. And he goes, But what I'm saying is this, that every generation will change things. The Gen Z are changing how we think about the Kenyan state. We thought about many things. Remember very well that it was the millennials, akina Jua Kali, akina Nonini, who changed the music. It is akina Kale Mashaka who brought in the political consciousness. Because also what I also don't like is that how we assume that these generations exist in isolation and in silos. The achievements we did as the millennials, the Gen Zs are building upon it. What the Gen Zs are doing, the Gen Alphas will build upon it. And even us, what the Gen X did, because remember our parents who grew up in the colonial era, they worked so hard to provide that we could go to academies because they knew that if my child goes to academy, they will succeed. So as we went to academy, but then we realized, we told them that, by the way, we thank you for all these things, but we wanted to be loved and to be hugged and to be told we are beautiful and handsome. We just wanted compliments. But you gave us soft life and access. But now what we're doing now, we are now treating our children differently. We're saying, I want to be a present father. I want to be emotional. I want to hold my wife's hand. I want to have PDA. Even if you're a Kalenjin man, man. Now we are saying Kalenjin men holding hands of their wives in public. We've not seen President Ruto hold the wife of Rachel Ruto. But he's an old school man, but they're Kalenjin men who are holding the hands of their loved.
And it's sad.
Yeah.
I mean, and even issues around sensitivity to emotions, being emotionally intelligent is not something very common. I think it's something we're all evolving towards.
So I wanted to add that part of the reason why millennials are struggling with emotions is because we grew up in authoritarian households.
Yes.
So we have stunted emotions.
Yes.
So most millennials, you can be a 30-year-old man, but you're really a 12-year-old boy.
Yes, absolutely.
Even though you've gone through all the rites of passages, you've built your Simba, you've gone through circumcision, all these things have been done to you. But because your emotions are stunted, you react like that 10-year-old boy who was ridiculed by your father.
Yes.
So we were not told to process our emotions and stuff like that. So we find very destructive ways to deal with it. So it's alcoholism, it's drugs and substance abuse, it is depression, it is serial dating. We are serial monogamists.
I mean, and it's a really tough place because the suffering of a man really comes from, and man is saying humanity in general, comes from that identity.
Yeah,
because it's how you perceive it, whatever suffering is. And I think really, when I think about even, allow me to critique even now the red pill.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
right. A lot of the red pill is very stoic. It's very black and white. It suits the millennials perfectly.
Yeah.
But it's not evolved to the current scenarios that we have.
Yeah.
And I think even a lot of the, think about, I'm not sure how to mention, but we have Kenyan red pill as well. Podcast. I won't mention them. But if you listen to them, they're very stoic and tough, and black and white, this and this, women that, women this, and even the language really is not sensitive. Because that's where they were. Right.
But wake zao wanagongwa na wengine.
The trends. It's very it's shaming. It's name calling. We're the ones who grew up with Mochongwano. So tumezoea you kuwa tough and all that. So when you think about it, but the challenge with that is that we may not be sufficient enough with the current scenarios in society. Not be adaptive, and that's where the challenge is coming, because there are so many things we have to learn. Consequently, we need to sit down and ask for help. There are so many things happening. We have economic problems. You might need to go to your wife and now begin to say, how's our money? It's no longer, can you talk about our money, not your money and my money. If I divorce today, have you tried dating a 20-year-old who is, if let's say if you're in your late 30s, you go for a 21-year-old. I'm not sure how that goes, but kunaanza kuona changamoto kidogo. And of course, it's romanticized, but there are challenges, if you're in completely two different eras, and the further, the more the variance. Sometimes it works, sometimes, but especially for us millennials, you cannot enforce rules zako kwa 20-year-old. Anakuambia hiyo hapana, hiyo bana, hiyo peleka kwenye bana, But you can do that to your fellow millennial, So
because the fellow millennial understand the language.
They understand the language. So even issues of divorce. I noticed this. Do you know? I realized wanaume wanaweza kufa na njaa. This is how you can easily become malnutritioned as a millennial. Kiwacho na bibi. With all these things, because our constant of a successful adulthood as a man, for instance, is kuwa na bibi, mtoto akicheza hapo, porch hapo, grass, you have a good car. That is
1, 2, 3. One wife, 2 children, 3-bedroom house, 4-wheel drive.
Like that. So when that changes, because we are not adapting, because you see, our women then are more, they're equally evolved a bit faster from us. Because I think men really are the original traditionalists. We still hold, in society, we are the ones who keep traditions. So we will still go back and say, so when your wife leaves or starts telling you, I don't feel I'm connected, or I don't feel, if she has more power, or she has gone to school, or she has more money, and you've not taken the leadership now to say, no, let's talk the we. No, it's no longer at, nikikohoa watu, because you still want to be like your father. So unaachanga na bibi, hujazoea kufua nguo, hujazoea all these things, and suddenly the things that you imagine, and even your identity is crumbled, it's crushed. You even question the meaning of life. That's why in 3 years, most people who are divorced, especially men, in 3 years wanakuanga wamepoteza pesa mingi sana. They don't know where they were, because that system is crumbled. And our women who are millennials, our wives who are millennials, they are adapting very fast. Now they have this other world that is teaching them all these things. They are adapting. Sisi tunakuamilia huko nyuma kidogo. How we do it, it's a bit toxic. What we imagine is now we go to red pill. Our game women. Have a lot of women. Keep your options open. Kila weekendi. I remember when your constitution ilikuja, then there were universities were devolved. So we no longer had Nairobi University. Now we had a university in every county. And I remember when the universities came in the villages, the polytechnics were upgraded to universities on weekends. Unajua wakati county imekuja, watu wamepata job kwa county, watu wako na professor Kibaki. No, Kibaki universities zimekuja much later.
But Kibaki is the one who changed the University Amendment Act to allow some of these constituent colleges to be universities.
Yes, universities. Usually you used to have millennials. Pale weekend, Friday. Na magari zao masubaru. In fact, it's millennials who own Subarus. We should remember that.
It's millennials who own Subaru. They're the ones who go to Vasha. They're the ones who Cheers Baba jackets.
Cheers Baba.
Are we Cheers Baba? The Gen X are the Cheers Baba.
Cheers Baba.
The windbreaker jacket.
The puff.
Yeah, that's Gen X. That's not us.
And so you see, we used to pick girls. Pick girls. These young girls and all these things. Yet we have wives at home. You see. So we have the crisis, or even morals. We live double lives, double lives. So that's how we are coping, as well. That's how we're coping. That's why we have. We tutawacho, my friend.
Tuna ushenzi.
You're not adapting to this thing, So it's okay to learn some of these red pill things, because the goal was to help understand the psychology of women and to cope better and just to adjust better. But we are still stuck up, We have to change. We have to be grounded. We have to take very different stance and adapt. And I think, as I was saying, the crisis of the Kenyan man who is a millennial is to adapt very fast. To have as many resources to be able to adapt.
To navigate the reality.
To navigate the murky waters of dating and masculinity, sort of.
Chomba, why does it feel like you have a lived experience around this area?
I think I've lived 1,001 lives. I think I've just observed, because I am a lot of male spaces. I have a lot of male friends. I have a couple of groups that formed. In fact, I think we've done. I'm sure we've done a couple of male. What do you call it? Hangouts. We go to hike and all these things and talk. And of course, I live among those Kenyan men. And I see that their struggles. And a lot of them don't want to admit that, hey, I'm struggling. That, there's one thing that I had, it's been commonly accepted. And usually we advise ourselves that as a man, you must know there's a potential you will be lonely in your 50s.
Yes.
Right? It's an acceptable term. But really, do you really know what it means to be lonely in your 50s, in your later years? It's catastrophic. That thing will kill you faster, right? So I think we need to be responsive and proactive, not just to be sensitive towards these things, because can we create structures that are functional, right? Instead of using negative coping mechanisms like overly drinking, having multiple women, and going to having being success addicts. So you go to the gym, ama kama mwanaume, just lift weights every day, which is good, but really the connotation is always feed your ego. Be you.
Yeah. Feed your ego.
I be as completely as independent from society and support system as possible. Now that's when you reach the crux of independence. But you realize that's very a Western mindset. Really.
Yeah.
It's very Indo-Western in the sense that you're separated from your support system. It's very patriarchal. Yeah. And it does not really factor in the sensitive bit. It's not communal like we have in our system, right? And that really does not help. Yeah. So I think if we want to address the issues that plague us, we have to go back to our identity, our root system, values and virtues. Because you move around without values and morality, and things will be bad for you.
Yeah. All right. Wow. Chomba, thank you so much for such, we must host you again and allow us to even plan a masterclass or something of the sort, to just invite you to talk to different men. I think I like the fact that you're both practical, but also you know the theory, you understand how, I just wanted to say that also for you as a man, if you're already self-prophesying that you'll be lonely in your 50s, instead of being involved in making better decisions now so you're not lonely in your 50s, you're being a foolish man. You're putting a cart before the horse, because now the way you live with your wife, the way you live with your children will determine how you live in your 50s and 60s. The way you handle your money, the way you handle your health, the sort of food you eat will tell us how you live in your 50s. And of course, I also understand that the red pill is meeting a certain objective of a certain men. And I like the fact that you've all called them the millennial men. And I'd never thought about it like that. Actually, even the people who are leading the red pill in this country are mostly millennials.
That's millennials.
They're millennials. They're churning out their frustrations and their pain into this movement. That
also remind you, even a lot of the feminist movement, it became very popular. After the affirmative action. Right? From the new constitution. Millennials. A lot of them actually were very vibrant, have gone quiet. Now life changes. Life ground the senator tofauti. I mean, think about it. You remember 2017, 2016, the people who are very vocal feminists, you know wajua, hauna wasikia siku hizi. You don't hear them as much.
How long are these red pill guys gonna last in this space?
Probably not long. I mean, you've heard rumors of some of them struggling with a lot of issues. I mean, we've had one of the leading podcasters, was in the US at some point. His life seems to be taking
downward spiral.
But he's still in denial, man. He's still in denial. He's still, But you can see the pattern. So, the results do not lie. The patterns never lie. Look at the patterns.
What is it about the male psyche that we don't observe patterns and we are sometimes very impulsive in how we make our decisions? What is it? Is there a psychological thing to explain that? Because, for example, Chomba, you grew up with a father, I'm just giving an example, not you, but somebody who grew up with a father who was not emotionally available or a father who was violent to their mother. This caused a rift between the children and their father and their mother. And the mother eventually became a matriarch who's, is considered power in their late years and stuff like that. Then this man is very lonely and now living at the behest of the mother. You, on the other hand, you saw these things, but instead of learning, now you can go the extreme way. Now you are overcompensating, but ultimately you're not being there for the way, Why don't we learn from our fathers? Why don't we choose a different path? Why don't we see our peers and say, honestly, I don't want to be like this person? Why do we like to just, we sort of like fulfill our own prophecies?
I think it's an allure of control. I think we desire to control outcomes so much as millennials that we do not really have a place to say, I don't know. I am vulnerable. I think I need to find more answers. We constantly in a state of covering up, overcompensating, right? Projections and all these negative coping mechanisms. Instead of saying, you know what, I think I am in a bad place, and accepting that, hey, maybe what I knew yesterday is not what works today. I think that's the challenge of adaptability, still sticking to the old ways. It's okay to have some bit of identity and all these things, but adapt. I think if you do not address those unconscious traumas and address them, if you don't have time to even go for a therapy session. I've seen men make fun about therapy.
Therapy is feminine.
Yeah, I mean, come on, man. You can imagine that with those some men say, and it's that, it's feminine, this, that's all. And it's sad. I think we have to get to that place of asking ourselves, how is this serving me? How so far?
I like that. Is this serving me?
Is this serving?
And is it serving the present and the future version of me? And if it's not serving you, drop it.
Yeah, drop.
You don't have to continue holding on to a facade.
Absolutely.
You don't need to continue.
Yes.
I have a friend of mine who's really drinking, and he's not a millennial guy. 40, 45 is millennial, 46 millennial? No, it's Gen X.
Gen X. Probably, yeah.
And he does hard labor, like, construction work. He's 46 years old. The jobs are becoming less and less. The children are becoming adults, estranged with the wife. And part of the thing that hurts me, that this man does not think about what will happen to me in the next 10 years.
Yes.
When the kids are now gone out, they are earning, then they band together around their mother, and then they begin to see him as the problem.
Yes.
Yes. But he's 40, 46. He doesn't think about the future.
Yes.
I know alcohol changes, of course, the mind, and alcoholism is a disease.
Yes.
But I pray for men sometimes,
man,
because we can be so rigid. Like in fact, the best example I have in my mind is a wildebeest. Men are like a band of wildebeests. Where we are programmed to cross the river at a certain time. It doesn't matter whether there are crocodiles. We've got to migrate from the Serengeti and come to the Mara. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter. But we have to, and we do it in large numbers.
Yes.
And the results are showing, because you are right about the statistics are damning, whether it's death by suicide, whether it is incarceration levels, whether it's alcoholism, whether it's gambling, all the social problems. Men are the custodians. But we don't want to ever stop and say, okay, this masculinity that continue to produce bad results, how do we change it?
I mean,
how do we change it?
I think we have to find our soft spot. We have to find our soft spot.
Yeah.
Someone gave an example of this guy called Jason. He's a very good, fella. Yeah. And it talks about positive masculinity in terms of comprehensive masculinity.
I like that. Comprehensive, not positive or negative. It's comprehensive.
Comprehensive masculinity.
Yeah.
And he says, we'll have to learn to be vulnerable. We have to learn to sit down and even cry when you want to cry.
Yeah.
It's okay. You may struggle. I'm not saying crying will solve all your problems. But have a way of processing. He says, there's this guy he knew who was a war veteran. The guy has killed people in Afghanistan and all these things. He's seen war. And Jason told him, you know what? Go get a dog, right? And don't get the bulldog and all these tough things. Go get a puppy-ish dog, those two fluffy dogs that, walk like this. The playful ones. That will be better for you, because it will give you that soft bit of you, right? And that's why our parents love our grandkids, by the way, because it's a soft spot for them. And so this guy was walking with a small dog. And while he's walking, some guys in the neighborhood saw him say, yo, man, get a real dog. Says, his response was, when you're the real dog, you don't need
a real dog.
A real dog.
Oh my God, that's profound.
Yeah? He's the real G, man.
Yeah.
This is real G.
Yeah.
But you can't be the tough guy in the world and still be the tough guy in your house. You can't be fighting the world and still inside, be unable to address weaknesses. So find your soft spot. Spirituality is a good place, right? Family is a good spot to get a soft bit. Spirituality, go to church, sing, cry, go be in a space where you're finding your soft spot, because life is hard, very hard out here, right? Especially for men, right? It's tough, but be in a space where you are vulnerable, you can express yourself without judgment, you can be humble, and I think that space can sometimes only be found in God and spirituality.
I like that,
because if you don't have a head, I mean, if you're the leader of the home, you also need to have someone who's above you. Some ideology, whatever you want to call it, whether you want to see your spiritual or not.
No, let's just call it God.
Yes.
Chomba, there's no need of us being politically correct here.
Yes. So find God. Find God. Find God.
And with God comes purpose and meaning and identity, and it comes with guardrails.
Yes, absolutely. Because then you're not the Almighty. You have to remember, as a man, you're not the Almighty.
You are not.
There's someone who's more almighty than you.
Exactly.
And I think knowing that will be one of the steps to just finding your soft spot.
And even now, you know very well that even in therapy right now, they're encouraging spirituality and faith. And now they're admitting that honestly, faith can actually carry you through what psychotherapy cannot carry you through. Just to go to church and to lift your hands and try is our life-changing thing.
Absolutely.
All right, Chomba, we're going to bring you back again. have had a fantastic conversation. We're hosting Chomba Njoka, who's a psychologist from Sagana. Kirinyaga. I like that. And that you really left Kirinyaga to come to Nairobi for this specific episode. Such a great honor. How can they follow you? Because I think they need to follow you and they need to find out exactly what where your content is.
Well, I'm mostly a lazy millennial who's just on Facebook. So
Yeah.
I'm only on Facebook as Chomba Njoka.
Okay.
So they can find me there.
Okay.
But my first name is actually Hiram. So I've done a lot of research work around other areas. So
Okay.
yeah, you can see, I guess if you want to look for me and find me, just find me on social media at Chomba Njoka. That is Facebook.
Facebook.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. And of course, this conversation can only come to you courtesy of Manspeqtive Africa, where we curate conversations that go beyond the screaming headlines. It goes beyond what is popular, what is trending, to get into the cracks of the matter. And that's why we bring professionals, psychologists, behavioral scientists, because we want to understand why are the Kenyan men struggling and what can we do to support them. And I believe that through this conversation, you have discovered a gem. You might not be a millennial, but these things transcend sometimes generations, and they are timeless knowledge and wisdom that you can actually get and benefit from. And of course, the hashtag is Manspeqtive Africa. Manspeqtive has a Q. You can follow us on YouTube. It is Manspeqtive with a Q. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you're watching us on YouTube, we are on KTN every Wednesday night. By all means, listen to us and watch us and tune in and let us know what you think. Until next time, I'm Dannish Odongo across all social media platforms. And like my fellow lazy millennial, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on all these social media platforms as Dannish Odongo. Until next time, adios and may God bless you.